Hey folks, today we're going to be tackling the engine tinware on the car. The tinware is part of the cooling system that helps direct some of the air around and keep things nice and cool. On my car, being a 50-year-old engine, it got pretty covered in grime and there was some rust and crust and the paint was flaking off and it needs restoring. I've already done this process on the brake backing plates and these have come up looking absolutely brand spanking new. They used to look something like this, as you can see on these drum brakes here, very, very rusty and crusty. So, let's get on with it. I've got the main pieces of engine tinware laid out here, and as you can see, they're pretty good condition, but they are a bit grubby and grimy and oily. That's going to happen when you've got a 50-year-old engine. That's old oil and gunk from the road all building up in there over time. And as you look at some of these closer photos, you can really see that grime caked on there. You can also see here where it used to be painted and that paint is flaking off and it's going a bit rusty. But luckily that rust is just on the surface. The first thing we're going to do is get these parts cleaned up. I'm just using regular workshop degreaser or engine degreaser here, different brands but basically the same thing. You can pick them up from any auto store or hardware store. They're pretty cheap, about $20 for 4 of them, but you do go through them pretty quick, so make sure you stock up. I put the parts in a little tray and spray them with that degreaser, then I let them sit for about 4 or 5 minutes. You want to make sure you're getting that degreaser on kind of everywhere that's, well, greasy. Pretty straightforward stuff. And let's just get this out of the way. Yes, my shoelaces are tucked into my shoes. They're pretty long, okay, and safety first. I'm pretty sure Vans are the appropriate footwear for this kind of work. And once we've waited 4 or 5 minutes, we just give those parts a rinse off with a hose or a tap, whatever works. Give them a bit of a scrub, and you'll find straight away most of that grease has gone. And as you can see, they're starting to look pretty good already. Most of that grease is gone now. There's a few stubborn bits here and there, but overall much cleaner than they were. And to tackle those stubborn bits, I just hit it with the degreaser again, and then give it a good scrub with a stiff brass wire brush. Using that stiff brush will start flaking some of the paint off and getting it down to bare metal, which will really kickstart the prep process. Now I've got something that looks like this. All that grime and grease is gone, a lot of that paint has come off, we're starting to see the bare metal, albeit a bit rusty, and just some of that old paint that we can now start removing. And removing that paint is what I will do. I take it over to the bench, clamp it down, and start the long slow process of grinding. And grinding. And grinding, and grinding, and did I mention grinding? And as much as I hated all that grinding, you've got to admit the sparks do look pretty cool. Although I'd imagine my neighbours hated it even more. So as I went, if I found any pieces of metal that were bent out of shape, I just grabbed some vice grips and tweaked them back to where they should be. And then I continued on the process of grinding. Really, what you're trying to do here is to get rid of all that surface rust and all that paint and keep grinding until you're back down to that bare, shiny metal. My general process was to take a stainless steel wire brush in the angle grinder and do a first pass of everything I could with that. The stainless steel wire brush is by far the most aggressive tool I had, but because it's a bit big and bulky, it wasn't always easy to get in the corners and smaller areas. I wasn't 100% sure on the correct PPE to wear for this. I decided on the polycarbonate face shield in case any of the wire brushes I was using felt like exploding at 1,000 miles an hour into my eyeballs. I also opted for a breathing mask because we're going to be throwing a lot of dust up into the air, specifically rust dust. I also wondered whether or not the paint I was grinding away was lead-based, but I think by the 70s when this engine was made, it had pretty well been phased out. So after about the 4 billionth time, I've run out of battery again, and I'm starting to think I should have bought a corded grinder. But sunk cost fallacy is a thing, so back to the battery charger and let's have a little break. And I'm not even joking, it really felt like a million times that I recharged these batteries. I could do about half an hour of grinding and then about an hour of charging, half an hour of grinding and then an hour of charging. It made the whole process go painfully slow. Once I'd gone over everything with the angle grinder and the steel wire, I'd then take a softer brass wire wheel in a drill and get in some of those harder to reach corners. I'd give it another pass pretty well all over and get as much off as I possibly could. For any of those really hard to reach places, I just put a wire wheel on a Dremel. And that did a great job of getting in those small nooks and crannies. But the Dremel wheels were the next tedious challenge. Using those ground them down so quickly. Here you can see the before and after and just how small those wheels got in a couple of minutes. And have I mentioned yet that there's a lot of grinding? There's even bench grinding. You might be wondering why I didn't just sandblast these. I did contemplate that, but to get a powerful enough air compressor, it's pretty expensive and I need a 15 amp circuit, which I didn't have. So I just stuck with doing things the hard way. But finally, after all that grinding, I had something that looked like this. And I was really happy with how they turned out at this point. Back to shiny metal, no more rust. It really is that bare, shiny metal that you're looking for, and once you get there, you know you're done. And while I was filming this, I really couldn't help but feel that I was being watched. I'm probably just imagining things. Let's get on with painting. And to do the painting, I needed somewhere to hang the parts, so I built this contraption. This was just cobbled together with some old parts and scraps I had. I cut out a hole with a hole saw to fit a curtain rail to hang things from. I then attached that piece of wood to a makeshift tamper I had from a previous project. I used it for compacting some soil when laying some artificial turf. It's just an upright pole attached to a base with some bricks to make it heavy and stand upright. And that gives me this strange looking thing that can stand on its own and support one end of the curtain pole to hang the parts from. The other end was also pretty easy, starting with cutting a hole to fit that rail again. Then I chopped it in half to get a half round piece. I just want something to rest the curtain rail on this time, it doesn't need to go around it. Then I just screwed it to a piece of wood I already had on the wall. I didn't measure anything for this. It was just scrappy, putting it together nice and quick. And the final piece of the puzzle was just to drill some holes in this old IKEA curtain rail that I had. Again, nothing was measured, it was just quick and scrappy, just enough to have bolts to hold things together. And now it was assembly time. Just pop that curtain rail on there, put some bolts through to hold things together, and we were finally ready to get painting. Or at least cleaning, ready to paint. Because painting is 80% preparation. So grab some wax and grease remover. I'm just going to give these parts a final blast with some compressed air just to blow any dust off. And then give them a wipe with the wax and grease remover. It's just a simple wipe on with one cloth, wipe off with another. So now I want to begin the process of hanging all these parts up. For that, I've just got some wire I got from just the local Bunnings. I think it's meant for tying up plants. Pretty well looped back on itself. And twist it together, leaving sort of a loop at the end, something like that. And then what I can do is I can pass that there through a bolt hole, like that, spread it out a bit, and that'll be enough to hold this part without getting too much wire in the way, so we make sure we can spray the whole thing and get spray on every surface. I want it roughly eye level, so that I can see what I'm doing as I spray it. About there should be fine. I'll just chop that off and twist that on there as well. And I'll do the same with the other parts. For the paints, I've decided to go with this Raptor engine enamel. I've got a grey primer, and then I put a satin black over the top of that. This is good for up to 300 degrees, which is plenty for this VW Beetle engine. It will cure here in the garage in the air, and it will also get harder and cure more over time with the heat of the engine. Raptor also have some other options, like flameproof, which goes to 1000 degrees. That's going to be more than I need and requires to be baked to properly cure, and I don't have anywhere to do that. I'm not a great cook, but I definitely don't want to put it in the oven where I eat and make things even worse. I'm doing a rattle can job on these parts, so now is a time where we shake for 5 minutes. And now I pop on that mask again and I'm finally ready to apply the primer. And once that first coat's done, you let it dry for 5 to 10 minutes, and then you go across the whole lot and give it a second coat. As you can see me doing here in real time, because I got a lot faster practicing on that first coat. And then that's the primer done, and the parts are starting to look amazing, and they don't even have the top coat on yet. After waiting about 1 hour, I just give the surfaces a light scuffing with P400 to 600 grit sandpaper. This is just going to help that top coat stick. And then I just give them a wipe down to remove any excess dust. And this is the moment the whole video has been prepping for. Rinse and repeat that primer process for 2 coats of the satin black paint, making sure to wait 5 to 10 minutes between each coat. Satin black is a great choice for these parts. Black dissipates heat well, as does the satin compared to a gloss, and it gives you that factory finish look. And once you've got that second coat on, you'll have something that looks like this. They've come out looking as good as new. I waited about 24 hours and then I could start taking them down. I take them down and very carefully remove those pieces of wire. These parts are looking pretty good. I'm very happy with them so far. I can't touch them too much because I get fingerprints in them. I put all the parts on a nice soft towel so they don't stick to anything or get damaged. Then I left them there for a few days to cure and harden. And then all that's left is the cleanup. As with most things at Swooping Cockatoo Garage, I have no idea what I'm doing, and I had no idea how much mess a rattle can can make. As the paint comes out of the can, it dries in the air and falls to the ground as dust. These parts have come out absolutely amazing, and I couldn't be happier. They look brand new. All that prep and that grinding and that tedious work has really paid off to have them come up so good. There's still a few bits I haven't done yet. I think you've seen enough painting at this point. You don't need to see them, but I will get those finished off. And for the fan shroud or the doghouse shroud, I haven't yet made up my mind exactly what I'm going to do there. We'll find that out in the next video. If you're not sure how I got to this point, check out my first video. I'll put a link to it so you can see how I tore down the engine in the first place and started pulling the car apart. And if you like what you've seen so far, please hit that like button and subscribe. There's more of this coming where we'll see how I restore this 1962 VW Beetle.